It's a country with a population of more than 100 million and a constitution that appears to legalize discrimination. Many say Ethiopia's 1994 constitution is the source of the country's ethnic divisions and, if applied completely, is a recipe for utter chaos. Coming up, we'll speak with legal analyst Dereja Demise about the new effort to call for change. Joining me now from Boston, Massachusetts is legal analyst Dereja Demise. Dereja, thank you so much for making the time. This is a very popular conversation, but let's really break it down as to what the issues are in the 1994 Ethiopian Constitution. It establishes, according to the document, a federal and democratic state structure. So let's start with the federal part. A lot of people say the issue is that it's ethnic federalism, but you say it's neither federalism or ethnic federalism. So what is it?
I would say that it's neither federalism because it does not allow for local rule. People at different levels of government were not, at different localities were not able to elect their own representatives and leaders. So let's say, for example, in Amhara, Oromo, or Tigray area, you have the same parties that have been in power in those areas, organized according to their ethnicity. And the different ethnic groups that reside there did not really have much of a say in terms of how the government in those states functioned. So you have a selected ethnic group dictatorship for the past since 1992. The 9 ethnic groups that were selected to rule different states were in power, and they had pretty much a dictatorial type of power to dictate what happens within those states. They decide what language to promote, what culture to promote. If they allow other ethnic groups to promote their culture and religion and language, it would be because they allow it and because they gave permission, not because those people within their own localities were empowered to elect their own leaders and come up with their own policy. So and I would say it's not purely ethnic federalism, because again, when you have a country that has over 80 different ethnic groups, and if you divide the country in 9 or 11 parts along arbitrarily drawn regions and assign a specific ethnic group to rule in that area, that doesn't really quite fit the definition of ethnic federalism. It's, again, a selected ethnic group that's administering a given area where numerous other ethnic groups reside. So this is the problem when you start dividing people along ethnic lines. You are going to run into problem because it's really not neatly packaged. You're not going to have pockets of people in one particular area that share language, religion, and culture, and where you have no homogeneous groups in all parts. That's not how the country existed. People intermingled, intermarried, people moved from one place to another. So at any given place in Ethiopia, you will have different cultures, different languages, different groups residing over a given area.
Dereja, let's look at the preamble. To your point, the phrasing of the preamble in this 1994 Ethiopian constitution is, "We, the nations, nationalities, and peoples of Ethiopia." When you compare that to the United States Constitution of "We, the people of the United States," it's interesting that the rights of nations and nationalities, presumably ethnicities in the context of Ethiopia, are emphasized. And that's also applicable to Article 39 of secession. So ethnic groups have the right to secede, but as you mentioned, there's over 80. So what does that look like if all ethnic groups decided to have their own state?
Yeah, so when TPLF led the effort to rewrite the constitution, they brought their own point of view and idea on how to organize society and impose that on the rest of the population. And the way they envision the country is not a country that is created by the will of the Ethiopian people, but it is a country they envisioned would be created by the will of different nationalities. They see each ethnic group as an interest group that has its own distinct interest, and you can always define what they want. They have a shared desire, and they come together with other ethnic groups and they form a union. I think that's a very different approach from the people coming together, as the people of a country coming together to form a more perfect union, as in the United States. But even then, when you say it is a union of ethnic groups, is it really a union of ethnic groups when you create 9 states and lump 80 ethnic groups into those different states, but you don't allow them to have a federal government, a federal system where they decide what happens at the local level, and you have one ethnic group that you select in charge of the entire region that you call Kullal, which translates to in English as an exclusionary zone. So they didn't even call the states. They call them exclusionary zones. So the mentality was entirely different from a mentality where people come together to create a union. It was, I think, a leftover from the Liberation Front mentality, where they looked at problems from the point of view of there's this oppressor, they're the oppressed people, and they're the liberators. So when you look at every problem from a point of view of a liberator, you tend to know what's good for the people. You assign one ethnic group or certain groups as oppressors, and then these nationalities and different ethnic groups, they're the oppressed, and they're coming together to form a union. So that's the kind of mentality they had. So when you mention Article 39, if you look at Article 39, Section 4, it doesn't really give a good definition of what an ethnic group is, a nation and nationality is. It basically says people have the same shared culture or language, and they want to secede from the union. They would petition by a vote and present it to the federal government, and they would then be allowed to secede. So there is really no test as to who can secede or not, except that they just have to be a recognizable nation or nationalities, which we have over 80. And so what happens if within one state, for example, the state of Oromia or Amhara or Tigray, different ethnic groups want to secede? So you can envision a situation where you can have 80 different states. Are we going to allow that? I don't think the people who came up with this formula really envisioned that to happen. A lot of people misunderstand the right to secede as if it's granted to the states. That is not a right given to the states. The Kullals, again, the exclusionary zones, they don't have a right to secede. The right to secede is given to the nations and nationalities, which again are over 80, close to 90.
I want to talk a little bit about why that might appeal to some people on the ground, though, and the judiciary process. But first, we're going to take a really quick break. Welcome back, Daraja. I want to talk a little bit about, for those that are on the ground that are maybe facing ethnic violence or don't feel safe in their particular area because of their ethnicity. Do you think this idea of only living among their ethnicity might appeal to people on the ground? And what would you say to those that might feel that way?
Yeah, it is a sad situation where people who've lived peacefully with each other for many generations suddenly feel threatened, and they're being attacked and killed different places for just being a member of a different ethnic group. It's utterly ridiculous, and it's something that has to stop. I understand the constant fear and sense of danger people living under in different parts of Ethiopia. And this is a result of the legal structure and this mentality that land belongs to a particular ethnic group. And if you are not a member of that ethnic group, you don't belong there. That kind of mentality stems from the language, the wording of this constitution. And if you look at the state constitutions, they also were worded in a way that grants land to ethnic groups. It says this land belongs to the nationalities that reside there, but again, it's when you have 80 different ethnic groups, it's really it's not possible to ascertain which land you're talking about, belonging to which group is attached to the land. Everyone can have a claim to a certain piece of land, and then that's a recipe for conflict. So the Constitution, by being worded in such a way, creates a constant tension between states, constant tension within states, constant tension between ethnic groups, constant tension between states and the federal government. And there's really not much mechanism embedded in the system to alleviate these tensions. The legal structure is not equipped to deal with claims that may arise from the wording of the Constitution itself, or the promise the Constitution makes to different groups. So I see the Constitution as a source of tension for the country, and the same Constitution is inadequate to provide redress or reprieve or an avenue to alleviate these tensions through the legal system.
And that brings us to a project that you, along with the American Ethiopian Public Action Committee, have recently launched to raise awareness about the issues in this constitution and create dialogue. Tell us a little bit about what that is intended to do and how it works.
APAC started an initiative to start a dialogue around the need to look at this constitution and see what reforms or changes have to be made in order to address a lot of the inadequacies. Specifically, we don't have any hope that tomorrow there's going to be a constitutional amendment or change. But what we're hoping to do is increase public awareness, and the public is going to demand at some point that there should be change. And but that change can only come from understanding of the issues that are embedded within the constitution and the tension it presents. For example, the Ethiopian constitution does not provide for separation of powers. Separation of powers at the federal level and at state level is important to limit the power of the government, to protect individual rights, bring accountability. Because there's no separation of power, and there's no separation of power, I would say, because there's no constitutional court. So one party can control the legislature, the executive branch, and also can control the courts, because the way the court structured is there's no constitutional court. There is a constitutional inquiry council, which looks at constitutional issues, but they are organized under the House of Federation. And the House of Federation is the ultimate arbiter of constitutional issues. And this is a very unique arrangement. I'm not aware of any other constitution in the world that creates such a system. There may be one, I'm not sure that I missed, but I've tried to look at different constitutions. I have not seen any.
We're going to share some information about how people can engage into the project that you all just started. Daraja Demise, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.